Netflix helped me catch my missing daughter of 4 years. My daughter Emma disappeared when she was 14, walking home from school on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I'm Michael, and for 4 years I've lived in the nightmare every parent fears most. The police searched for months. We hired private investigators. We posted flyers in every city within 500 miles. Nothing worked. Emma had simply vanished without a trace, like she'd never existed at all. My wife couldn't handle it, and moved in with her sister after the first year. I stayed in our house, keeping Emma's room exactly the same, just in case. By year 3, even the private investigator admitted we'd exhausted every lead. The police had moved Emma's case to inactive status. Everyone told me I needed to accept that she was gone, probably dead. But I couldn't stop looking. Last month, I was watching a Netflix documentary about teenagers living on the streets in major cities. Depressing stuff, but I watched everything about missing kids, hoping for any sign. I was half paying attention, scrolling through my phone, when something made me look up. A girl walked past the camera in the background. Just for 3 seconds while the interviewer was talking. She was older, different hair color, but something about the way she moved made my heart stop. I rewound it 5 times, staring at that brief glimpse. It looked like Emma. Older Emma, but that was impossible. The documentary was filmed in Seattle, and we lived in Phoenix. I'd checked Seattle dozens of times over the years. I started watching more Netflix content filmed in Seattle. Random indie films, local documentaries, travel shows, anything with street footage or crowd scenes. It became an obsession, scanning every face and every background shot. Then I found her again. A comedy special filmed at a Seattle club 6 months ago. During the audience reaction shots, she was visible for maybe 4 seconds. Same girl, same facial structure, but with short red hair instead of the long brown she'd had at 14. I screenshot both appearances and compared them side by side. The jawline, the way she tilted her head when she smiled, the small scar above her left eyebrow from when she fell off her bike at age 10. It was definitely Emma. But she looked healthy, happy, even, well-fed and clean, not like a runaway who'd been living rough for 4 years. Someone was taking care of her, which meant someone had been hiding her. I contacted the production companies for both shows, asking about the Seattle filming locations. The documentary crew gave me the address where they'd filmed that street scene. The comedy club was called Laughs on Pike Street. I flew to Seattle that weekend and walked the neighborhood where the documentary was shot. Nothing looked familiar, but at the comedy club, I showed Emma's photo to the bartender. He recognized her immediately. She comes in every few weeks with this older guy, he said, real protective of her, won't let guys buy her drinks or anything. She goes by Riley now, not Emma. The older guy was around 50 with graying hair. The bartender said he seemed possessive, always keeping her close, answering for her when people tried to talk to her directly. They always paid cash and left before the shows ended. I gave the bartender my number and asked him to call if she came in again. While I waited in my hotel room, I kept thinking about how healthy she looked, how she seemed to be living a normal life while I'd been falling apart searching for her. 3 days later, the bartender called. They were there. I raced to the club and saw her through the window, sitting at a corner table with a man who matched the description perfectly. She was 18 now, legally an adult, but she'd been 14 when she disappeared. The man with her looked familiar in a way that made my stomach sick. As I stared through that window, I finally recognized him from all those years of searching, and I understood exactly how Netflix had led me to the truth about what really happened to my daughter. I pushed through the door of Laughs on Pike Street, my heart hammering against my ribs. 4 years of searching, of dead ends and false hopes, and now she's right here, sitting at a corner table with a man I finally recognize. Mr. Peterson, Emma's 8th grade math teacher. The realization hits me like a physical blow. I'd seen him dozens of times at parent-teacher conferences, school events, even passed him in the grocery store once or twice. He'd always seemed so normal, so unremarkable. Just another middle-aged teacher with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of man nobody looks at twice. The comedy show is in full swing, the performer on stage telling some joke about airline food that nobody at Emma's table seems to be listening to. Emma Riley, as she goes by now, is sipping what looks like a soda, her red hair catching the dim stage lights. Peterson sits possessively close, his arm draped across the back of her chair, fingers occasionally brushing her shoulder. I approach their table slowly, trying to control my breathing. Peterson sees me first. His eyes widen slightly behind his glasses, then narrow with recognition. He leans over and whispers something in Emma's ear. She looks up, confused, then alarmed. Emma, I say, my voice barely audible over the comedian's punchline and the resulting laughter. She stares at me with no recognition in her eyes. My name is Riley, she says, her voice deeper than I remember, more adult. I think you have the wrong person. Peterson stands up, positioning himself slightly in front of her. Sir, you're mistaken, he says, his voice carrying that same authoritative tone I remember from parent-teacher conferences. Please leave us alone. Emma, it's Dad, I say, ignoring him completely. I've been looking for you for 4 years. The people at the neighboring tables are starting to notice, turning to watch our interaction with curious expressions. The bartender who called me is watching from behind the bar, phone in hand, ready to call security if needed. I don't know you, Emma says, but there's uncertainty in her voice now. A slight tremor. She looks to Peterson. David, who is this? David, not Mr. Peterson anymore. He's reinvented himself, just as he's reinvented my daughter. He's nobody, Peterson says firmly. Just someone confused. We should go. You're not going anywhere, I say, stepping closer. Emma, you disappeared when you were 14, walking home from school on a Tuesday in March. I've been searching for you ever since. Emma's face pales. That's not, David told me. She stops, confusion clouding her features. What did he tell you, Emma? I ask softly. Peterson grabs Emma's arm. We're leaving, now. Take your hand off my daughter, I say, my voice deadly calm despite the rage building inside me. The comedian has stopped his routine, noticing the disturbance. The manager approaches, asking if there's a problem. Several patrons have their phones out, recording what they probably think is just a bar fight brewing. This man is harassing my daughter, Peterson says smoothly. We were just leaving. She's not your daughter, I say, pulling out my phone. Her name is Emma Lawson. She disappeared 4 years ago from Phoenix when she was 14. I'm her father, Michael Lawson. I show the manager the photos I've kept on my phone all these years. Emma's school picture from 8th grade, the two of us at her 13th birthday party, the last family vacation before she vanished. Emma stares at the photos, her expression shifting from confusion to something like fear. David, she says uncertainly. Don't listen to him, Riley, Peterson says urgently. Remember what I told you about your father, how he hurt you, how I saved you? The pieces fall into place with sickening clarity. You were grooming her, I say, the words tasting like bile. You were her math teacher. You took her. Emma's eyes dart between us, her world visibly crumbling around her. I don't understand, she stammers. The manager, seeing this as beyond a simple dispute, has called the police. I can hear sirens in the distance. Your name is Emma Lawson, I say gently. You have a small scar above your left eyebrow from when you fell off your bike when you were 10. Your favorite color was purple. You played clarinet in the school band. Your mother and I have been devastated since you disappeared. Something flickers in her eyes, recognition, memory, or maybe just doubt about the life she's been living. He's lying, Peterson says desperately. Riley, remember what we talked about? How your father would try to find you someday? How he'd say anything to get you back under his control? You convinced a 14-year-old girl her father was abusive, I say, the horror of it washing over me. You isolated her, changed her identity, moved her across the country. The police arrive, 2 officers pushing through the crowd that has gathered. Peterson immediately starts talking, claiming I'm harassing them, that I'm delusional. But Emma is still staring at the photos on my phone, her finger hovering over the image of herself at 13, brown hair falling past her shoulders, smiling in front of our house in Phoenix. I remember that house, she whispers, so quietly I almost miss it. The yellow door. Mom painted it because she said it was like bringing sunshine home. Peterson tries to pull her away, but one of the officers stops him. Sir, we need everyone to stay put until we sort this out. Emma looks up at me, really looks at me for the first time. Dad? She says, the word tentative, like she's testing it out. And in that moment, as the police separate us for questioning and Peterson continues his desperate lies, I see my daughter beginning to emerge from behind the identity he created for her. The long nightmare isn't over, not by a long shot, but after 4 years of searching, I finally found her. And I'm never letting her go again. The police officers separate us, one taking me to a corner near the bar while the other guides Emma away from Peterson. She keeps looking back at him, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Not at me, at him, like she's terrified of being away from him. It makes my stomach turn. Sir, I need you to explain what's happening here, the officer says. His name tag reads Ramirez. I pull out my phone again, my hands trembling as I bring up the missing persons report I've carried digitally for 4 years. My daughter Emma Lawson disappeared from Phoenix when she was 14. That man, I point at Peterson, who's speaking urgently to the other officer, was her math teacher. He's had her this whole time. Officer Ramirez scrolls through the report, his expression shifting from skeptical to concerned. And you're certain that's your daughter? Look at her, I say, my voice breaking. The scar above her left eyebrow, her eyes, her face. She even remembered our house in Phoenix with the yellow door my wife painted. Across the room, Emma is shaking her head at whatever the female officer is saying to her. I can see her mouth forming the words Riley and David repeatedly. Peterson has positioned himself where she can see him, and he's making small gestures with his hand that seem to be calming her. He's still controlling her, I say, the realization dawning on me, even now. Officer Ramirez notices too and signals to his partner. They move Peterson further away, out of Emma's line of sight. Immediately, her anxiety seems to spike. She wraps her arms around herself, looking frantically around the room. We need to get them both to the station, Ramirez says. And sir, I think you should follow in your own vehicle. This situation is complicated. The next few hours are a blur of statements and evidence. I sit in an interview room at the Seattle Police Department, repeating my story to detectives who look increasingly grim as they cross-reference my information with the missing persons database. Mr. Lawson, Detective Warner says, sliding a cup of coffee across the table to me. She's in her 40s with short gray hair and eyes that have clearly seen too much. We've confirmed your daughter's identity through the national database. The fingerprints match those taken from her bedroom after her disappearance. Relief floods through me so intensely I have to put my head down on the table for a moment. When I look up, Warner's expression hasn't softened. There's more you need to know, she says carefully. We've been questioning both your daughter and James Peterson separately. Your daughter still believes her name is Riley Winters. She's convinced that Peterson, who she knows as David Winters, rescued her from an abusive home situation when she was 14. That's insane, I whisper. We never. I believe you, Warner says. Peterson's story is falling apart under questioning, but the psychological manipulation he subjected Emma to is extensive. We've seen cases like this before, but rarely with this level of sophistication. She slides a folder across the table. Inside are copies of driver's licenses, birth certificates, and school records, all for Riley Winters and her father David. The documentation looks legitimate at first glance. He created an entire false identity for her, Warner explains, and for himself. We found evidence of at least 3 other identities he's used in different states. This isn't his first time. My blood runs cold. Other girls? Warner nods grimly. We're coordinating with authorities in Oregon and California. There are at least 2 other cases with similar patterns. Girls between 12 and 14 who disappeared from schools where Peterson taught math. I remember how unremarkable Peterson had seemed, how he blended into the background at school events, the perfect predator invisible until it was too late. What happens now? I ask, my voice hollow. Emma's been taken to Seattle Memorial for evaluation. They have specialists there who work with victims of long-term psychological manipulation. Warner hesitates. Mr. Lawson, I need to prepare you. Emma may not want to see you right away. From what we can piece together, Peterson spent months convincing her that you were abusive before he took her. He's reinforced that narrative for 4 years. I think about Emma's confusion at the comedy club, the way she looked at me without recognition, then with fear. My daughter thinks I'm a monster. Can I at least go to the hospital? I ask, even if I can't see her yet? Warner nods. I'll have an officer drive you, but there's something else you should know. We found a storage unit rented under one of Peterson's aliases. Inside were photographs, journals, school schedules. He'd been tracking Emma for nearly 2 years before he took her. 2 years? I repeat, stunned. She was only 12 when he started grooming her. Yes, Warner confirms. He was methodical. The journals detail how he identified her as vulnerable, her age, her sensitivity, the fact that you and your wife were having some normal marital disagreements that Emma was aware of. He used all of that, twisted it, and created an alternate narrative that he fed to her over time. At the hospital, I'm not allowed to see Emma. The psychiatric team explains she's experiencing severe disorientation and distress as Peterson's influence begins to fade. They've started her on a carefully monitored treatment plan designed for victims of coercive control. I sit in the waiting room all night, staring at the institutional green walls, thinking about the yellow door my wife painted because it reminded her of sunshine, thinking about Emma at 10 with her skinned knee after falling off her bike, brave through her tears, thinking about the 4 birthdays I missed 15 through 18 and all the moments in between. A young doctor with kind eyes brings me coffee around 3 a.m. You should try to rest, she says gently. This process takes time. What exactly did he do to her? I ask, the question that's been haunting me all night. She sits beside me, choosing her words carefully. From what we can tell, Mr. Peterson used a technique called reality substitution. He systematically replaced your daughter's memories and perceptions with alternatives that served his narrative. It's similar to what we see in some cults, but targeted specifically at Emma. Will she recover? Will she remember me, us? The real memories are still there, the doctor assures me. They've been suppressed, not erased. With proper treatment, most patients in similar situations do recover significant portions of their authentic past. Most, but not all. The unspoken qualifier hangs in the air between us. Dawn breaks over Seattle as I watch the hospital parking lot fill with early shift workers. Somewhere in this building, my daughter is beginning the long journey back to herself. Back to Emma Lawson, who loved purple and played clarinet, who has been Riley Winters for so long she might not remember how to be anyone else. I close my eyes and make a silent promise to her and to myself. No matter how long it takes, I'll be here. No matter who she thinks I am right now, I'll wait for her to remember the truth. I wake up to the sound of gentle rain against the hospital window, disoriented for a moment before remembering where I am, the waiting room at Seattle Memorial. My neck aches from sleeping in the uncomfortable chair, and the same kind-eyed doctor who brought me coffee is standing over me with a fresh cup. Mr. Lawson, Dr. Chen from the psychiatric team would like to speak with you. I follow her through a maze of corridors to a small conference room, where a middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses waits. For a heart-stopping second, he reminds me of Peterson, and my stomach lurches. Mr. Lawson, I'm Dr. Chen. I've been working with Emma since she was brought in yesterday. He gestures to a chair. Please, sit. How is she? I ask, my voice rough from lack of sleep. She's experiencing what we call cognitive dissonance. Her brain is trying to reconcile 2 completely contradictory realities, the one Peterson created and the actual truth. He opens a folder. I wanted to discuss some developments. Emma has begun to have memory breakthroughs during our sessions. My heart pounds. She remembers? Fragments. The yellow door you mentioned, her clarinet recital in 7th grade. But these memories are causing her significant distress because they contradict the narrative Peterson implanted. What exactly did he tell her about me? The question I've been dreading. Dr. Chen hesitates. He convinced Emma that you had been physically and emotionally abusive, that her mother left because of your violence, that he was a family friend who helped her escape when you became dangerous. The coffee turns to acid in my stomach. None of that is true. We know. Detective Warner shared the evidence they've gathered. Peterson's manipulation was extraordinarily calculated. He slides a document across the table. The police found this in his storage unit. It appears to be a timeline of his grooming process. I stare at the meticulously organized spreadsheet. Dates, locations, progress notes, about Emma dating back to when she was 12 years old. Peterson had documented everything, which classes he arranged to have her in, conversations they'd had, vulnerabilities he'd identified. April 14th, Emma mentioned parents arguing about finances, potential leverage point. I read aloud, my voice shaking. August 23rd, suggested private tutoring to mother, accepted. First one-on-one session, scheduled. I remember that day. My wife and I had been so pleased that Emma's math teacher was offering extra help. We'd thanked him profusely. October 17th. Began narrative insertion about father's temper. Emma receptive to suggestion that arguments at home indicate deeper problems. I can't read anymore. He was planning this for almost 2 years before he took her. Dr. Chen nods grimly. The detective also mentioned they found detailed research on psychological manipulation techniques. Books, articles, case studies. Peterson studied how to break down and rebuild someone's reality. Is she going to be okay? I whisper. With time and proper treatment, yes. But there's something else you should know. He pauses. Emma asked to see you this morning. My head snaps up. She did? Yes, but I need to prepare you. She's still very confused. She may say things that are painful to hear. She may still believe some of Peterson's lies. Can you handle that? Yes, anything. I just need to see her. Dr. Chen leads me to a small room with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. I'll be right outside, he says, opening the door. Emma sits by the window, looking out at the rain. Her red hair is pulled back in a ponytail, making her look younger than 18. When she turns, I see my daughter's eyes looking back at me, uncertain, afraid, but present in a way they weren't at the comedy club. Hi, I say softly, staying near the door. They say you're my father, she says, her voice flat. They showed me pictures, birth certificates, school records. I nod, fighting the urge to rush to her. I am David. Mr. Peterson, he told me my father hurt me, that he was dangerous. She watches me carefully, but I keep remembering things that don't fit with what he told me. What kind of things? I ask gently. The yellow door. Mom painted it because she said it was like bringing sunshine home. She recites the words mechanically, like she's testing them, and I remember. Falling off my bike? You carried me inside and put dinosaur band-aids on my knee even though I wanted the princess ones. A laugh escapes me, half sob. You said dinosaurs were tougher, and you needed tough band-aids for a tough girl. Something flickers in her eyes, the scar on my eyebrow. You were 10. You were trying to do a trick where you stood on the seat. I told you to wear your helmet, but you said helmets were for babies. Her hand drifts up to touch the small scar. I hit the pavement. There was so much blood. Head wounds always bleed a lot. You were so brave, though. Didn't cry once in the emergency room. She's quiet for a long moment. If you're my father, why did I think you hurt me? Why was I so scared when I saw you at the comedy club? I take a deep breath. The police found evidence that Mr. Peterson had been planning to take you for a very long time. He was your math teacher, and he used that position to slowly convince you that home wasn't safe. The detective showed me the storage unit pictures, she says, her voice suddenly small. There were other girls too, in the photographs. My stomach drops. Other girls? She nods. Girls who looked like me, same age, same hair color before he made me dye it red. There were journals with their names, Ashley, Megan, Tara, Emma. I say carefully. Do you remember when you started to believe I was dangerous? She frowns, concentrating. He would ask questions during our tutoring sessions. About home, about you and Mom arguing. He'd say things like, that must have been scary. Or, most fathers don't act that way, until I started wondering if what was happening at home was normal. Tears fill my eyes. Your mom and I argued sometimes, but we loved each other. We loved you. He showed me bruises, she says suddenly. On my arms, said you did that. Emma, I never what? I know, she interrupts. I remembered during therapy this morning. He grabbed my arms during a tutoring session, squeezed, until it hurt. Then the next day, he pointed to the bruises and told me you'd done it when I was sleeping, that I'd blocked it out because it was too traumatic. The horror of it steals my breath. Emma, I'm so sorry. There's more, she says, her voice steadier now. In the hospital, when they were examining me, they found old fractures in my wrist that had healed. I told them you did that too, but I remembered today that Peterson broke my wrist when I tried to call Mom after he first took me. He said if I ever tried to contact anyone, he'd break the other one. I have to sit down. My legs suddenly unable to support me. The systematic cruelty of it, the calculated way he hurt her and blamed me, is almost too much to comprehend. Did he? I can't finish the question. The doctors did tests, she says, understanding what I'm asking. They said there's no evidence of sexual abuse. He wasn't interested in that. He wanted, she struggles to find the words. He wanted to own me, control me, make me completely dependent on him. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of 4 lost years hanging between us. The doctor says I might never remember everything. She finally says that Peterson did something called reality substitution, but I remember the yellow door, and I remember you carrying me after I fell off my bike. She looks directly at me, and for the first time, I see recognition in her eyes. Dad, she says tentatively, testing the word. And in that moment, I know that whatever happens next, however long the road ahead might be, my daughter has begun to find her way back to herself, back to me. I'm here, Emma, I say. I've always been here. The courtroom feels like it's closing in on me as Emma takes the stand. It's been 3 months since that night at the comedy club in Seattle, and Peterson's trial is finally underway. Emma sits tall, her hands folded in her lap, but I can see the slight tremor in her fingers as she's sworn in. She's dyed her hair back to its natural brown, though it's still short, a physical reclamation of herself that her therapist suggested might help with the healing process. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Valerie Reyes, approaches Emma with gentle confidence. Miss Lawson, can you tell the court how you first met James Peterson? Emma's voice is steady but quiet. He was my 8th grade math teacher in Phoenix. I was 12. And when did your relationship with Mr. Peterson change from teacher-student to something else? Emma takes a deep breath. He offered to tutor me after school. My parents, she glances at me briefly, they thought it was great that a teacher was taking extra interest in my education. As Emma details Peterson's methodical grooming process, I grip the edge of the bench so hard my knuckles turn white. The jury listens intently as she explains how Peterson spent nearly 2 years isolating her, planting seeds of doubt about her home life, and gradually constructing an alternate reality where I was the villain and he was her savior. He would create situations, Emma explains, her voice growing stronger, like squeezing my arms until they bruised, then the next day telling me my father had done it while I was sleeping. He said I'd blocked it out because it was too traumatic. A woman on the jury covers her mouth in horror. I can't look at Peterson sitting at the defense table, his face a mask of practiced concern. His lawyer had tried to argue that Emma was an unreliable witness due to the psychological manipulation she'd experienced, but the judge allowed her testimony given the mountain of physical evidence backing her account. And what happened on March 12, 4 years ago? Reyes asks. That was the day he took me, Emma says. He told me my father was planning to hurt me that night. He showed me text messages that looked like they were from my dad to him, threatening me. I now know they were fake, but at the time, she pauses. At the time, I believed him. He said he was going to help me escape, that we had to leave immediately. She describes how Peterson drove her across 3 states, changing vehicles twice before reaching Seattle. How he broke her wrist when she tried to call her mother a few days after they left Phoenix. How he convinced her to dye her hair, change her name, and create an entirely new identity as Riley Winters. He made me rehearse my new life story for hours every day, she says. If I got details wrong, or mentioned my real past, he would withhold food, or lock me in a closet until I remembered correctly. When Peterson's lawyer cross-examines her, trying to suggest she went willingly, Emma doesn't flinch. I was 14 years old, she says firmly. I had been systematically manipulated by an adult I trusted for almost 2 years. There was no willingly about it. After Emma's testimony, the forensic psychologist who evaluated Peterson takes the stand, explaining to the jury how his journals revealed a man who viewed psychological control as the ultimate form of power. Mr. Peterson didn't just want physical custody of these girls, the psychologist explains. He wanted to own their minds, to rewrite their histories and identities until they believed his version of reality was the only truth. The prosecution presents evidence from Peterson's storage unit photographs, journals, identity documents for 3 different aliases. Most devastating are the files on other girls, Ashley, Megan, and Tara, all of whom disappeared from schools where Peterson had taught before Phoenix. During a break in the proceedings, I step outside for air, overwhelmed by the clinical dissection of what happened to my daughter. Dr. Chen finds me there, having attended to support Emma. She's doing remarkably well, he says. Her ability to separate Peterson's implanted narratives from reality grows stronger every day. Will she ever fully recover? I ask. Dr. Chen considers this. Recovery isn't about returning to who she was before. It's about integrating her experiences into who she's becoming now. Emma is extraordinarily resilient. When the trial resumes, Detective Warner testifies about finding Ashley Reeves, one of Peterson's previous victims, living under a false identity in Portland. Like Emma, she had been convinced her family was abusive. Unlike Emma, she had been with Peterson for 7 years and had a 2-year-old child. Emma's testimony was crucial in locating Ashley. Warner explains. She remembered Peterson mentioning specific landmarks near where his niece lived. Those details led us to Ashley's apartment. The trial lasts 2 weeks. Peterson is found guilty on all counts: kidnapping, child endangerment, assault, and false imprisonment. The judge sentences him to 25 years without possibility of parole, plus additional time for the crimes against his other victims. As we leave the courthouse, Emma walks with her shoulders straight, though I can see the emotional toll the trial has taken. We're halfway to the car when a woman approaches my wife, Sandra, Emma's mother. She looks older than when she left 3 years ago, her face lined with grief and regret. She'd flown in for the trial but had sat in the back of the courtroom, uncertain of her welcome after leaving when the search for Emma seemed hopeless. Emma, she says softly. Emma stares at her mother, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. Mom, slash. They stand frozen for a moment before Sandra steps forward and wraps her arms around our daughter. Emma remains stiff for a heartbeat, then melts into the embrace, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. That night, the 3 of us sit in my hotel room, awkwardly navigating this new reality. Sandra explains how she'd fallen apart after Emma disappeared, how she couldn't bear to stay in the house with all its memories. I thought it would be easier if I wasn't constantly reminded, she says, her voice thick with regret. But it wasn't easier anywhere. I understand, Emma says quietly. Peterson made sure I couldn't remember anything clearly either. It's like we were both running from the same pain. Later, when Sandra steps out to take a call from her sister, Emma turns to me. I want to help the others, she says. Ashley, Megan, Tara, they're going through what I went through, but they've been living in Peterson's reality even longer. Are you sure? I ask. You've been through so much already. She nods firmly. I remember what it was like, believing everything he told me. If I'd been with him longer, she trails off. They need someone who understands, who can show them there's a way back. 2 weeks later, Emma sits across from Ashley Reeves in a specialized therapy center outside Portland. Ashley's son plays nearby with toys, while Emma gently explains how Peterson created false memories, how he used the same techniques on both of them. I watch from behind a one-way mirror with Dr. Chen, marveling at my daughter's strength as she helps another survivor begin to untangle reality from fiction. This is remarkable, Dr. Chen murmurs. Emma's using her trauma to create something healing. It's not common to see this level of resilience and empathy so soon. When Emma emerges from the session, She looks drained but determined. She remembered her real birthday today, she tells me. Not the one Peterson gave her. It's a start. On the drive back to our temporary apartment in Seattle, Emma is quiet, looking out at the city that was her prison for 4 years and is now, strangely, becoming a place of healing. Dad, she says suddenly, I think I want to study psychology when I start college next year. I want to understand what happened to me, to us. Whatever you want to do, I'm behind you, I tell her. And I think I want to keep using Riley sometimes, she adds, not because it's who he made me, but because parts of her are still me, the strong parts that survived. I nod, understanding that my daughter isn't just Emma anymore and never will be again. She's Emma and Riley, both the girl who disappeared and the young woman who endured. The survivor who's helping others find their way back from the darkness. As we reach our apartment, Sandra is waiting outside with takeout bags. The three of us aren't a family the way we once were, but we're learning to be something new. Something built on truth rather than Peterson's lies. And for now, that's enough.